let's have a look at the real numbers, the public companies. Match.com is running at $800 million a year at this stage. A great success story for our industry. They bought Meetic, of course, but they're also seeing $220 million of profit a year this year. So really, size does matter. They've had a 17% subscriber growth, and by 2015, we predict they'll be at $1 billion a year revenue. Meetic is part of that number, but we've got the breakout for that as well. We know that they should do about 185 million euros for 2013, and of that, 17 million profit. They bought two, and that contributes 11 million to the bottom line. But that's going to make a multi-million loss, unfortunately. But what we really want to do is see how are these public companies performing versus the indices for each country. So we took a look at Meetic, and we looked at the SPF 250, which is their major index. And then we looked at the stock market price of Meetic versus that. And yes, good news, they have actually, over this period at least, outperformed the market more recently. And what happened here is Match bought more of the shares from Mark Seaman Sr. Now they own 87.5%, and they announced that they were going to buy the rest of the company. They won 100%. Spark Networks is going to do about $70 million a year this year, with a $13 million or so loss, we predict. They've got very high marketing expenses because they're expanding into the Christian segment, which makes a lot of sense, really. They've run iDate very successfully for many years. But let's have a look at those numbers. One of our avid readers emailed me and said, have you seen how much they're paying for new users? In fact, in Q3, they paid $11.6 million for marketing to the Christian network and had 822 new users. So using that math, you end up with crazy numbers. They basically spent $14,000 for a new user, which is completely wrong. The math is wrong on this. But here's the real math. So we had to make a key assumption here. And the key assumption is that they lose 50% of their paying members each quarter, which is actually probably quite conservative. And we actually should take this into the... I'll run this as a post on OPW, and we can get into discussions and try and make this number more accurate. But meanwhile, let's have a look at iDate. They're coming in about $120 per paying new member based on that assumption, based on the numbers you just saw. Now, iDate, again, coming here, iDate's basically paying for Christian Mingle, because they're coming in at $20 per new paying member, amazingly. So how's the market received this? The major index, we've got the Wilshire 5000 for the USA, and actually the market's received it quite well. And I think there's something very interesting going on here, because Christian Mingle has been marketed out so much, they've got a lot more press, they've got a lot more awareness because of this marketing program. And I can't help but think that that awareness has helped drive the retail investors' awareness, and they've just been made aware that Spark Networks exist and they've started investing. They did take a bump right here because one of their major shareholders, who owned 20% stake in the company, sold the entire thing, and Osmium Partners picked up most of it. Now, there's a quote from a competitor here who's a Christian Mingle competitor, and he said, "You can't spend $200 to make $100 and expect the market to reward you." So we'll see how Spark Networks does this year. One to watch. Meanwhile, FriendFinder, also a very interesting story here. Conroy's back. He was the original CEO and founder. Now he's back. And so let's have a look at their stock, how that's done. Ooh dear, that's not good for the industry or our investment community. Cupid, meanwhile, not a happy story either. They did 43 million in revenue pounds for the first half of the year, which includes 16.5 million for their casual products. That's an important number. I'll tell you in a second why. But they lost £2.5 million in the first half of the year. They've sold the casual products. They've sold the casual products, which includes Be Naughty and Flirt.com. Let's see how they performed against the market. We've got the FTSE in England. How would they have done? Not too well. They dropped from 114 to 49 pounds. So let's have a look at G1. G1 is the top dating site in China. I think we're going to see them do about 300 million. That market will do about $300 million equivalent for for 2015. That's our prediction. And right now, G1 is doing about $80 million a year in revenues. 85% of that is online, and interestingly enough, they're making 15% of their revenue from events. Food for thought. That market is very different from here. Matchmaking is very culturally acceptable. Events are expected. And so two main competitors here are BuyHere and Genai. And Match actually took a 20% share in Genai not too long ago, which I think is very major news because of the way Genai does dating. They've really got a matchmaking hybrid. They do, because several years ago, the Chinese market was focused on month-to-month on mobile. Everything was billed on mobile. And the Chinese government said, you're not going to do this anymore because there's too much abuse. You can no longer do recurring on mobile. They basically killed the entire market. Imagine not being able to do recurring all of a sudden. So they killed the industry, and the industry morphed, and instead was taking 6-month memberships up front and morphed into a hybrid matchmaking mode, which is hallowed ground. No one's figured that out in the USA, so a huge opportunity there. Match picked up 20% of Genai, but the real story here is what will they do with what they learn from Genai? Let's see how G1 did. Against the Wilshire 5000, because that's where they're listed, again, not so good. Let's have a look at Meet Me now. Meet Me is a social dating site. They expect to do about $13 million in Q4. They did about $40 million. They should do about $40 million for the year, but they've lost $11 million so far, Q1 to Q3. Not a happy picture. Let's see how the markets receive them. Again, not a happy picture. So really, we can see Spark Networks and Meetic have outperformed the market. Meanwhile, G1, Cupid, and Meet Me have underperformed, which is actually better than the last time I did this analysis, so I'm actually pleased to see this. Meanwhile, eHarmony and Zeus are moving towards possibly an IPO. In fact, Zeus, very likely an IPO this year. So I emailed Marcus Friend and said, what's going on, Marcus? I've just seen your numbers. I happened to look at compete.com and Plenty of Fish is tanking. What's going on? This looks horrendous. And he gave him a very interesting number here. He said 86% of the Plenty of Fish users under, actually 35, correction, under 35-year-olds are logging in from mobile. So I think that's representative of a lot of dating sites. But this is really a landslide movement in the mode our users are using dating. So thank you very much. This is the Cortland Brooks team. We've been doing this a while. I've headhunted people from this conference since 2004. We're a husband and wife team. We've been doing this since 2005. And for $2,500 every 2 weeks, we can give you access to a team of seasoned professionals. Thank you very much.